Namaste. My name is Alok Siddhi Tuladhar. I am a documentary filmmaker and also an enthusiast of cultural and natural preservation.
And namaste, my name is Rick Silber, and I'm the executive director of International Mountain Trekking.
So, namaste, Rick.
Namaste, Alok.
Very nice to have you here today.
It's a pleasure for me.
Let's quickly go over why we are here today. What would you like to talk about today?
Well, what I'm really excited about is that we just completed our second mushroom trek in the Annapurna, where we had great success in finding lots of different kinds of mushrooms. And just as important, we had great success in taking people into this extraordinary part of Nepal safely, with an opportunity to explore the mountains and all that it represents. So I'm very excited that we could do that.
Right. That's wonderful. But how did it all get started? How long have you been with it, and what was your motivation?
You know, the motivation thing has changed as new things have come on the horizon. So some of the stuff that we thought about back 4 or 5 years ago when we started this idea have shifted as the horizons have changed. But I'll start with the basic concept of wanting to create a trekking company that would provide clients with a more intimate exposure to Nepal, to Nepali culture, to the spiritual world that is here in Nepal, and to give them the opportunity to see things up close. And the vehicle for that was the search for mushrooms. That was sort of the overarching idea, that whereas most trekking companies, if we're just, they do a great job, but they march their clients around the Khumbu or the Annapurna, and they expose them to all those great sites that are there. But they're not getting them interested in the biology that's hitting every time they put their foot down. So that's something that we're interested in.
Right. But how did it actually roll out? Did you meet someone, or did you get a revelation, or what happened?
The revelation came out of desperation, okay? The revelation came out of the fact that there are hundreds and hundreds of trekking companies.
Right.
And like any new person on the scene, how do you distinguish yourself from your competition? Which I thought would be a very daunting thing. And I did have this original idea that since I would happen to be interested in mushrooms, and when I'd come to Nepal previously, I saw mushrooms along the trail, and I saw mushrooms being prepared in the tea houses, and I saw people gathering mushrooms and drying them on the roofs of tea houses. So I was aware that there was this interest in this organism.
Right.
I mean, look, it happened like this. I Googled mushrooms, Nepal. Or I think I may have Googled mycologist, which is the scientific name for a scientist who specializes in mushrooms. And I got this guy named Sanjeev, who said, no, you don't want me, you want Shiva Devkota. I then emailed Shiva Devkota, and it just was a perfect click right there.
But then I understand there was also a third triangle to make the equilateral triangle complete.
That's true, and I appreciate yours. And of course, I had an existing relationship with Sonam Jangbu Sherpa, who's a dear friend of mine and an experienced licensed high-altitude mountain guide from the village of Fortsay. And he and I wanted to solve a problem. The problem is clear and that is Western companies or other companies come to Nepal with their clients, and they basically hand them over to the Sherpa guides, and the outside companies, because it can be from Japan, it can be from any place, it doesn't have to be from the West, hold on to the lion's share of the money and pay the Sherpas and the porters a salary, a daily rate, but they were not giving them access to really what the financial opportunities that were being maintained by these other companies.
Right.
And so I was interested in seeing if I could, in one small way, tilt that a little bit towards more what sometimes is referred to as economic justice. It's a big word, but...
Yes, but from my understanding, what I'm hearing from you is that really possibly comes out of the compassion you have for the people here, which actually most of the time is the other way around. We are in the part of the world, the Himalayas, where there's supposed to be a lot of compassion, but here it's working the other way around, it seems.
Well, I'm flattered and a little bit embarrassed by that lovely descriptor of me. Look, as much as I love Nepal, love exists all over the world. So, it and love is, goes both ways.
Right.
So what can I tell you?
Now, please tell us a little bit about the other important actor in this equation, mushrooms. What is a mushroom? Is it just a plant? Or?
Sure. A lot of people think that a mushroom is a plant, and for many,
It's not?
It's not a plant.
Oh.
A lot of people, and science, many years ago, didn't understand this organism, but the mushroom is a member of the kingdom fungi, which is its own kingdom.
Right.
Like mammals are a kingdom, and fungi is its own kingdom. But the best way I can describe a mushroom that we see is that it is the fruiting body of this organism. And so the example that is often given is, though you have an apple tree, the entire tree is under the ground, and the only thing that pops out is the apple, and that apple is there to spread the seeds and to propagate other apples. The same thing is true with a mushroom. It's the fruiting body, the sexual fruiting body of an organism, and mushrooms have been around for a long time.
Right.
And so they've developed lots and lots of strategies for living in very biodiverse parts of the world. I think I heard that mushrooms are found on every continent, including Antarctica. Not necessarily in the form that we might see them, a fruiting body, but the organism exists.
Right. But now I'm a bit lost as to how these two actually connected with each other in your endeavors. The fungi and what we just talked about before that, the Sherpa culture, the people there, the environment there, and all of these adventurers, tourists you are bringing into the region, into the Himalayas.
Well, what I've tried to do with international mountain trekking is design an experience that I would want to have if I came to Nepal. So when I thought about that, I realized I would like to experience the spiritual parts of Nepal that I can within the time period of a trek. I would like to experience, if I could, the home life of people, if I could do that within the time period of a trek. And I would like to provide people with an opportunity to have their own journey, so that there's space for them to appreciate where they are. And I want to talk about that for a second. What happens when you go on a typical trek, and I understand this from one perspective, they want to make sure nobody gets lost, nobody gets injured. So to do that, they march them around in relatively close proximity to each other. And one of the things that I say to my clients from the very beginning is you're the most important you're the most important safety device here. You have to be the one to be careful for where you are, to not be texting and walking because you'll stumble and fall. But more importantly, I'm not going to make you walk 2 meters behind the person in front of you. We will always make sure we have somebody way in the back. But I really love it when I see my clients strung out across the trail, because I know that space that they occupy when they walk is their own space. And I just think that little thing of just giving people the opportunity to walk by themselves through an extraordinary landscape, I just think it gives you that opportunity. Right. And I'm sure you know this as well. I mean, sure, you could focus yourself into a meditative state, and that's very important. Yep. But I think that what can happen as you hike along without the distractions of another person or anything, it and I don't want to say the word forces, but it just gives your mind the opportunity to be present in that moment, instead of saying, oh, look who's ahead of me and look who's behind me and I have to keep going, and that distracts you.
Right. So kind of like the vibes, you absorb the energy of the place that you're in, the company that you're with.
Right, because look, I've gone on lots of climbs and adventures and things like that, some of which I've done solo, and I'm well aware of the space that gets created when you realize, there's nobody else around. Well, we're not nobody else around, but there might be an opportunity for somebody to be, a half a kilometer away or a quarter of a kilometer away. Mm-hmm. It's enough to provide that. So we do this, and look, we haven't lost anybody yet, so we seem to be doing okay with that.
So for one of your clients, the participants, to have this very unique, rich experience, which could be just a physical enjoyment or to some level spiritual, I guess one of the most critical parts is the arrangements of the logistics. We mentioned the Sherpas, the crucial role they play. But what about the porters? How did you deal with the issue of actually them being the real, doing the real heavy work, but totally being undermined and in the shadows, and sometimes being taken undue advantage of? What was your take on this?
Well, first of all, thanks for asking that question. That's, I think, a really important topic. I didn't appreciate what was happening to our porters. I knew we were paying them better than what I understood to be standard wage, and I thought that was great. But I came to understand, and I felt a little guilty that I didn't have a greater understanding. But when we would come into a tea house, they would disappear. They would magically disappear. Well, where they were they weren't disappearing. They were going to a very rudimentary place to have a place to lay down and sleep, and to have some dalbat. And I didn't understand this, and I said to my colleague Sanam, I said, I don't want to do that. They eat where we eat, they sleep where we sleep, and I just wanted to, that little piece of it I thought was important, to recognize that we really are utilizing them in a way that is quite extraordinary. The other thing, just to tell you, is that I made absolutely sure that nobody was putting more stuff into their duffel than they needed. Even though you say, your duffel has to weigh a certain amount, we also provide all of our clients with duffels so that, at least with regard to the logistics of packing it and putting it on your back, you don't have somebody with some hideous, rolling, heavy duffel, which we've seen. I've seen porters, laboring under these things. Right. So we try to do the best we can, and Look, I can just tell you that one of the wonderful things about this last trek in the Annapurna is that our porters emerged from the shadows and participated in activities that would be more or less associated with guiding. You know, for example, when we did our acclimatization hikes, they were right there with us. Usually the porters are nowhere to be seen,
Right.
because it's not part of their responsibilities. But I think we engaged them. They were enormously helpful to us, and I think it's a great thing.
I think I know what you're saying here. It basically helps them consolidate their own pride and dignity and raise it to a higher level. Otherwise, because they feel we're just porters and they don't even have the right to speak up or ask questions. But what you're saying is now they feel more enabled and strengthened to interact more with the clients and you.
I felt that, and I think they also showed an interest in our search for mushrooms. They got involved in that with us, and the more eyes you have looking across the landscape, the more things you're going to find, and so that was cool.
So I think this is wonderful and exemplary. I hope other trekking companies and other trekkers would understand this better, and they will follow the example you set.
I hope so, because look, hiking and trekking in Nepal is great for Western clients. All I have to do is carry a day pack with their water bottle and a candy bar and a light rain park or whatever.
Yep.
And behind them or in front of them is a human being carrying their sleeping bag and all their stuff, and
maybe 5 times or 10 times the weight.
Yeah, sure, absolutely. So that's part of the culture in the Khumbu and in other parts of the Himalaya of porters. That's been around for hundreds of years. So this, historically was a paradigm that was available.
All right.
So I can't say, okay, come to the Himalayas, but carry your own stuff.
Right.
But, I think we can recognize
Right.
that economic justice, social justice requires that people be treated with respect. That's all.
So thank you once again for your very fair and, trailblazing, I think, treatment of your team, your colleagues, the porters especially. And I also understand that when your clients arrive in Nepal in the next day or two before they leave for the trek, they also have a little opportunity to observe the local culture of Kathmandu, one of the oldest civilizations.
Again, asking myself, what would I like? I came up with the idea of going to Solukhumbu Temple before the sun came up. We were talking a little bit before about the special spiritual significance of that time of day when there's a transition from one state, darkness, to light.
Yep.
And that interzone, the dawn or the dusk, is always very special, and I think has been recognized religiously as a auspicious time of day. And so we get up early in the morning, 4:30 in the morning, and we go to Solukhumbu Temple before the sun comes up. We hike up, or we climb up those wonderful steps, and we come up to this very special space. And again, my strategy is give them time to just be in that space. And I mean, look, I'm always moved myself, and I hope and I think I've observed my clients appreciating that.
And this is where I must thank you for the opportunity to be actually very much involved at that particular moment or little chapter of the entire venture. And I agree 100% with you that literally I could observe, I mean, from a distance, of course, that many of the people who went to Solukhumbu that morning, it was kind of like they're awakening to this part of the world, because most of them have never come to Nepal, this part of the world, and when they reach climb up the steps in the dark and then witness basically the entire world coming to light in front of them. And then later on correlate it with all of the wisdom of the Buddha. So it is kind of like a small step of awakening. So Rick, this is where I must thank you for letting me be part of that experience.
Well, the feeling is mutual because your insights, not only into what's there to be seen in the present, is that you provide them with your terrific historical and personal understanding of that space through your own family and your own involvement in the history and traditions of Nepal and its spiritual traditions.
Right.
But I want to say one thing. I think people often ask me, why are mountains so cool? Why is it something to do? And I don't think it's a coincidence that in the major religions of the world have always honored high spaces. You go to Jerusalem in Israel, Mount Zion, it's the space that is holy, where the Temple of Solomon is built. Mm-hmm. It is also the place where Muhammad ascended to heaven, exactly from those spaces. You think about the overarching spiritual traditions of the West and the Judeo-Christian traditions and the Ten Commandments, the template of ethical behavior, and that was revealed on top of Mount Sinai. So there are many. I don't want to go on all of them, and I can't. But so I think whenever you get an opportunity to go to and there's no coincidence that Solukhumbu Temple was built on the highest part of Kathmandu, right?
Of course.
So I think there's I think this experience can be. I think the experience of a spiritual space can be universally experienced, but you have to climb the steps.
Yeah.
You have to put your foot in front of the other and make it up those steps.
Right. So you have actually, by now, in the last 2 years, put together 2 expeditions to these high mountains. And if you were to look back and kind of do a very quick assessment of where you stand, where we stand on this, how would you do that? How would you examine it?
Well, look,
it?
I think what's great is that we have we've demonstrated that the idea works. We've demonstrated that you can merge these 2 ideas of being involved in a scientific search for the discovery of this organism, mushrooms, and perhaps even mushroom species that have not yet ever been explored, along with and side by side with trekking in the most extraordinary environments on the earth and doing so safely. So we've demonstrated that it works, that we can do it.
Right. And as a byproduct, I don't know if it was a byproduct or something that actually you planned deep inside without really talking about it much at the beginning, is a wonderful documentary movie that we've been able to produce together. Would you like to tell us a little more about that?
Okay. First of all, thank you, Alok. Okay, from my heart.
Pleasure.
For bringing your creativity, your vision, also Dusty's vision, and I think you two really were able to capture the grandeur of the Himalayas, along with the intimate involvement of our clients in that environment. So, I don't take anything for granted, and I appreciate your aesthetic, your creative eye. I recognized that what we were doing was important, and that it would be important to see if we could make a documentary. And you may remember that I came over here with a list of 200 or so shots that I thought we should do. And we also know that that went right into the trash can immediately. But I'm not answering your question. I want to get back to your question. Look, we were able, within the space of 14 or 15 days, to show that there is a journey that is going on here, both the journey that takes place physically and the journey that takes place internally. And through our interviews, we were able to reveal those two journeys.
Hold on.
Yeah.
Now, where does mushrooms come into the... What journey are you talking about?
Well, I'm not being very clear, so let me try to backtrack. I appreciate that. I think that the act of discovery is one of the most fundamental driving forces of the human existence.
Right.
Okay, so you just full stop right there. Discovery can be anything. It can be cooking, it can be love, it can be a mushroom, it can be anything. But you need to be able to involve yourself in the act of finding out about something that you don't know about. And so mushrooms are a vehicle for giving that opportunity, for saying, okay, we're going to come here, let's keep an eye out for mushrooms, which gives you that focus, that purpose. And I think it also, and I say this a lot about people who are interested in mushrooms, that they have a robust generosity of spirit. Mm-hmm. By that I mean, and you do this with me, which I so appreciate. You know, I'm sort of walking around and I don't really know what's happening, and you say, here, let me show you something. It might be a statue of Lord Buddha, but you'd say, look, here is where this Buddha with this kind of aspect to him, and then this one, and I would just be walking right by it, you know. So I appreciate that you stop me and say, wait, I want you to pay attention to something here, and I also know that what you're telling me is, I'm going to show you that there's an onion here, and I'm going to peel one little layer back, just one. So if you feel like you want to peel some more, it's on you, which I appreciate that you at least show me that this onion needs to be peeled a little bit. So I just think that those are all aspects of discovery.
And the profoundness and the layered nature of life in general. So you're saying all of that is somehow, at least we attempted to capture in the movie.
I not only attempted, but succeeded in capturing it. You know, it had happened in ways that were completely unscripted and unexpected.
That's what documentary is all about.
Well, and that's what's cool, because you know, we had the stories of Carla and her journey, and it was so wonderful that she found through combining mushrooms gave her a sense of her own ability to take on new and exciting challenges.
Yep.
I just think that's so cool.
And together with Carla, there were these little human stories that eventually strung up together very beautifully with, from time to time, the actual mushrooms as the connecting substance, which actually, if you look at mushrooms, from what I understand, they really connect the entire biological world all over the world.
Yeah.
Throughout the world.
It's a profound insight that you're sharing, and I appreciate that. The Wood Wide Web.
Yeah.
The Wood Wide Web.
I get it. The Wood Wide Web.
Wood Wide Web.
Okay.
And that Wood Wide Web is a way of short-handedly describing this relationship that trees don't stand by themselves, and plants don't just plop down in the garden and grow. They interact with and are reliant upon and grow successfully through the relationship with mushrooms. And that insight has been shared from scientists to the public. And so I appreciate that it does have both a physical meaning and an existential meaning as well. Well, if we take, for example, the Buddhist knot, that design, if I understand it a little bit, is a way of representing the interconnectedness of all things, of all entities in this world.
Right.
And so I think that might be another, I hadn't thought about it until the
Right.
second, but another paradigm for what we're trying to show.
You're exactly right. The endless knot.
The endless knot, yeah, thanks.
So, what's the name of this movie, and how will people all over the world get to see it?
Well, the name of the movie is Look Down, Not Up, which is we were able to use this title from Karnasakia's iconic book. But the title of the movie also represents the dichotomy of being in these mountains where you would tend to look up and see these peaks soaring into the heavens. And so what we're sort of saying, or what we are saying, is also look down and see what's happening right where your feet are going to. And, you know, when I think about it, and I hope this isn't a big stretch, but when we were, you know, the depiction of Lord Buddha with his hand down touching the earth, right?
Right. The moment of enlightenment.
Yeah, so that's really profound. But what's he touching? The earth.
Yep.
So maybe what, and I'm sort of getting a little bit choked up by this thought, maybe what we're saying is touching the earth means looking down and touching the earth. When you see a mushroom growing and you need to look at it, you need to touch the earth, you need to dig it out, you need to look at it. So maybe we are trying in some small way to create that spiritual space.
Or just dive deeper into the knowledge that exists.
Yeah.
Wow, I never thought about it this way.
I hadn't either.
So when you came back this year with your clients and with your team, did you have any specific goals for this trip, which was a little different from last year?
Well, look, we had a big job in front of us, and that is to go over Thung La Pass.
The Torang La Pass.
Thank you.
No problem.
I appreciate it. I knew I screwed that up. Which is about 18,000 feet high. That's pretty challenging. You know, Everest Base Camp is 16,700 feet high. And I'm going to speak in feet because it's the way I think. So we had a couple more thousand feet to get people and myself over. But I had great confidence in everybody because I knew that with our Sherpa guides and with our knowledge on how to properly acclimatize, that we would accomplish that goal, and we did. Everybody got over the pass successfully, safely, and got to experience when we got there. And just by the way, when we did get to the pass, we broke out our badminton set and played badminton right at the pass. And I'm hopeful that we might establish that this could be the highest badminton game on the planet Earth. We're going to see if that actually happens.
Wow. Was it more challenging compared to Everest Base Camp, more enjoyable? How did people feel, your participants?
I think it was challenging. I don't necessarily think it was more challenging than Everest Base Camp, because what enables people to climb over these heights like this is knowing that you have a way of doing it. You know, we demonstrated throughout the trek that there was a technique for getting over these high parts, and the technique is really to just go slow but steady.
Right.
And as long as you did that, it's quite interesting to me that you can just keep going. Look, you have to have some mental discipline, you know, but look, if you're reasonably fit and you're well fed and hydrated and you're motivated, you can do a lot.
You did have a case of one client who got sick and...
Yeah, sadly, one of our clients developed a kidney infection, and we were able, thank God, to get her medevaced out on a helicopter.
Okay.
And she went to Grande Hospital in Kathmandu, a great hospital, and was taken care of by a terrific nephrologist. And she's back in the United States.
Okay. And she's doing well?
Yeah, my
now,
understanding, yeah, she's doing quite well.
Okay, so in terms of addressing the great biodiversity that exists in the Himalayan region, especially with the collection of the samples there for further analysis, the genetics analysis, what exactly were you able to do or you plan to do on that?
This is a really important part of this project. We have very talented PhDs working to do this work.
Dr. Shiva
Devkota, Dr. Britt Bunyard in particular. And we brought equipment with us so that we could properly dry the mushrooms so that they could be preserved for further analysis. And Dr. Devkota, through his academic credentials and his knowledge, was able to get permits to bring these samples out of the Himalayas. Otherwise, you can't bring anything. This is part of the treasures of the Nepal's national park system. But we were able to dry them properly, and now they're on their way to further analysis to see whether we have found new species. I don't want to even say that we have, because it would be I can't say that, but we're looking. It's like everything else. You have to start looking, and that's what we're doing. And we're using the tools of science, modern science, to genetically analyze these organisms along with their morphology, how they look, and we'll see.
So there is a very real possibility that these expeditions are actually helping to contribute to the scientific knowledge of this region, the scientific information about the fungi. After all of these tests are done, how important is that for the world community, the world scientific knowledge base?
I think it's has an overarching importance. Mm-hmm. In order to understand our world, you have to reveal it. You have to see what its relationships are with others, like the endless knot. So you need to see what's there. Also, climate change is here, and we need to know, before we can analyze, what's changing, we need to understand what's there right now. So this is part of this process, and I'm very proud that we can do, our little piece of it, right. To say, okay, we maybe not have recognized the role of this particular organism here and what it's doing, but the first step to that is to identify it, to see whether it's ever been found before. So that's going to take some time. So.
But that is, like you said, it is of huge significance, I believe, at a macro level. But what about at the micro level, where the villages you go to, for example, specifically related to the cases of mushroom poisoning because of lack of knowledge?
Yeah.
Where does that come into the picture?
Well, again, this reflects the extraordinary personal and scientific and humanitarian commitment of Dr. Devkota. He has been involved in many ways, single-handedly attempting to educate indigenous peoples in the rural parts of Nepal to the hazards of picking the wrong mushroom and feeding it to your family or to yourself. And this tragedy was happening more frequently during the time of COVID, when there was greater food insecurity in Nepal and people were looking around wherever they could for food. So we came equipped on this trek and on the last trek with posters that illustrated which mushrooms are harmful, and we would put them up wherever we could, and Dr. Devkota would talk to whomever he could, whenever he could, to educate them about this. And that work continues outside the trek. Dr. Devkota is working to coordinate this with health officials in Nepal. So that's just another piece of what we're trying to do.
Right. how do you plan to take this further in the coming years? You have a team building, you have enough gaining a lot of experience. What lies ahead?
Well, what I'm really thrilled about is that, in particular, I'm going to be going in 2 weeks to the world-famous Telluride Mushroom Festival in Telluride, Colorado. It's been meeting there for, I think this is its 40th year.
Wow.
And hundreds of people go every year and hear from the world's leading scientists.
It's always sold out, I believe. And
It's always sold out. And we're going to be showing our movie there. We had kind of a soft opening here in Kathmandu last night at the Kathmandu Guest House, which was well received, so I'm thrilled about that. And in 2 weeks, I'll be going there with Yehuda Goldman, our creative director, and you will be coming in spirit. And Dusty as well.
Yes, for sure.
I'm sorry we can't put you in our duffels and get you over there. But I'm looking forward to doing that. But to answer your question, look, I'm hopeful that we can create an interest in this project, and that through this kind of media, we can expand our reach and bring more people here.
Okay, so we've covered a lot. I just want to say thank you. Very genuinely, from myself, from my friends, colleagues, from the whole community, the Nepalese people, for what you're doing here, because this obviously is very, very different from what a normal trekking company does. You have touched so many aspects of Nepalese biodiversity, culture, the scientific world in so many different ways. And that I think is not only visionary, but also I've seen how much effort you put in personally. You go out of the way to make sure everything is right. So thank you once again. And is there something that you want to say?
Sure. And I first of all, thank you for that. But I will say this. The other day when I was hiking up to Thong La Pass, thank you, I was filled with a sense of gratitude. Simple gratitude that I had this team. I have you, I have Sanam, I have Shiva, I have Poo Chiri Sherpa, I have the porters, I have my clients, and I have my health to be able to do this. And I just felt a sense of gratitude that for whatever constellation of reasons, I got to be here to do this. So first of all, thank you again, and that's what I wanted to say.
Okay. This is very touching, Rick. Let's part with
Okay.
that mutual feeling for now.
Great, thank you, Alok.
Thank you.
Okay.
Namaste.
Namaste. Is that okay?